Let's just jump right into this explainer and unpack exactly why your grocery bills and everyday expenses feel so absolutely suffocating right now. Look, if you've been staring at your bank account, scratching your head, and wondering how on earth your paycheck isn't stretching nearly as far as it used to, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're breaking down the hard realities of America's cost of living shock in 2026.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the 2026 wallet squeeze, shrinkflation, and surge pricing, perception versus economic reality, tariffs and oil shocks, and finally, America's new economic fragility. All right, part one, the 2026 wallet squeeze. This is all about validating that intense financial stress you've been dealing with.
To really understand this stress, we've got to ask the big elephant in the room question that is literally keeping everyone up at night. Based on a pretty stark 2026 Resume Now survey of over 1,000 workers, that question is, will your wages ever actually catch up to the cost of living? It's the absolute core of the financial anxiety people are experiencing every single day.
And wow, the pessimism out there is just staggering. Literally half the American workforce, 49% to be exact, believes their paychecks will mathematically never catch up, like not in their lifetime. Another 32% think, sure, maybe, but it's going to take many years. Only a tiny 19% fraction actually expect to break even within the next year. People feel fundamentally underpaid. And the survey highlighted that if they somehow got a raise today, it wouldn't even go toward a vacation or anything fun. It would go straight to basic survival and paying down debt.
And because of this intense financial pressure, almost half of us, 48%, are delaying major life milestones. We're talking about putting off buying a home, having kids, going back to school, or changing careers. So think about what that means. This isn't just a temporary economic blip. It's essentially halting the American dream. People are literally putting their long-term futures on hold just to survive the present.
Moving on to Section 2, Shrinkflation and Surge Pricing. Basically, the hidden cost waiting for you in the grocery aisle.
Okay, so we absolutely have to talk about shrinkflation. You've probably noticed this, right? It's the practice of reducing a product's size, weight, or quality. But, and here's the kicker, keeping the price exactly the same, or even raising it just to secretly maintain corporate margins. So ultimately, even when prices look completely stable on the shelf, you are actually paying way more for less.
Just look at the contrast here. Pre-pandemic, we all generally expected stable prices, standard portions, and high quality. It was a given. But check out the 2026 reality. Companies realized during the intense supply chain stress tests of the COVID era that they could really push consumers to the absolute edge. The result? Smaller chicken nuggets and noticeably lower quality ingredients. Brands are quietly swapping out the good stuff for cheaper fillers, like pumping unnecessary seed oils into your barista oat milk just to stretch their profit margins.
Section 3, perception versus economic reality. Let's dig into the actual math behind all this pain.
So, the math shows exactly why the checkout counter feels so brutal. Food at home prices rocketed up 31% between 2019 and 2024. This massive sustained surge was heavily driven by supply chain shocks, rising input costs, and, honestly, corporate pricing power. And here's the thing. While inflation has technically slowed down, those prices never actually came back down. They just locked in at a much, much higher new normal.
Meanwhile, look at gas. The data shows gas prices just swung wildly, going from a pandemic low of $1.48 a gallon all the way up to over $5 before finally settling into a persistent inflationary state around $3.03. That's an 18% higher baseline than pre-pandemic levels. Just the sheer whiplash of that volatility alone has been totally exhausting for the average household budget.
Now this is super fascinating. Everyone is feeling the pinch, right? But the data shows our political leanings actually act as a heavy filter on how bad we perceive it to be. Researchers found that Republicans are statistically way more likely to perceive higher inflation than Democrats or independents. Women also reported higher perceived inflation than men. But surprisingly, factors like your income, your age, or whether you live in the city or the country showed no statistical impact at all. It really just goes to show how our personal lenses shape our everyday economic reality.
All right, Section 4, Tariffs and Oil Shocks. This is exactly how massive global geopolitics ends up directly hitting your wallet.
Let's walk through this chain reaction, because it's like a giant domino effect. Step 1. Broad blanket tariffs get applied to imported goods. That compresses domestic business margins and eats right through their cash reserves. Step 2. The 2026 Iran war creates a massive global oil supply shock. Step 3. Because businesses had already totally exhausted their financial buffers dealing with those tariffs, they couldn't absorb the oil shock. So what happened? The tariff stripped away corporate shock absorbers, meaning when the oil spike hit, businesses had absolutely no choice but to pass the cost directly and instantly to you.
And hey, this isn't just about the gas in your tank. Think about a simple pair of sneakers. An astonishing 70% of a sneaker's cost has direct oil price exposure. It's in the synthetic fabrics, the foams, the adhesives, the freight to ship it. When you layer high tariffs on top of a massive oil shock, the cost of manufacturing and shipping everyday goods absolutely explodes.
Which brings us to Section 5, America's new economic fragility on the international stage.
You know, true economic strength isn't just about sheer size or GDP output. It is really about resilience and the ability to absorb systemic shocks. We've officially entered a new economic unnormal, where our system's agility has been deeply compromised, and it's left our economy hypersensitive to the next global crisis.
So when you look at the 2026 summit, sure, China used it as theater to project strength, but the reality, both of these superpowers are currently limping under immense, though very different, economic strains. The US is battling this tariff-driven inflation, highly stressed consumers, and a severely diminished ability to absorb shocks. But on the flip side, China is fighting a massive domestic property crisis, really weak consumer demand, and youth unemployment so bad that the government has even struggled to publish the data. It's a very, very fragile global standoff.
The big takeaway here is profound, and it's summed up perfectly by industry expert Andy Polk. He says economic resilience can become a hard ceiling on the United States' freedom to sustain coercion. Basically, when the public is being crushed by the price of groceries and gas, the government simply has way less flexibility and way less public support to sustain strategic pressure globally.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. With the old rules of trade completely gone, how will the United States rebuild its economic buffer to protect consumers in a new era of constant global shocks? Because we simply cannot afford to keep operating without a shock absorber. Thanks so much for joining me, and I really hope this gives you a much clearer picture of the unseen forces hitting your wallet today. Catch you next time.